Hello and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from livestream.travel and eTurboNews in Honolulu. With me, as always, is Dr. Peter Tarlow, joining us from College Station in Texas. Raining here still. How's it in Texas, Peter?
Oh, well, it's really beautiful here. So we have a little bit of paradise. It's in 70 degrees and nice blue skies. I understand that the situation in Hawaii, on the other hand, is somewhat chaotic. I believe on the island of Maui, they had a dam that has burst, or they're afraid the dam is going to burst. I don't remember exactly, but that they're having some real needs to evacuate people in different parts of Maui. So
Yes.
I guess you guys are having quite a lot of rain. We had our cold. We had our miserable week. I guess it's your turn now.
Yeah, luckily I'm in the Waikiki Ala Moana part, and it's always dry. It's raining for 5 minutes, then the sun comes through again. But it's still a rainy day here, and I know from living on the North Shore on the other side of the island for so many decades now, before I moved here, there it's always raining.
Yeah,
So yes, and Maui did have um, there was some evacuation and threat,
yeah.
and this happens. It's kind of a yearly thing, so it keeps
Oh,
happening.
is it
It's nothing
okay?
really that unusual,
Not that it made the national news.
right?
Um, on the other hand, it's kind of was a little bit of a break from the consistency of hearing about COVID around the world. I think a lot of people last night turned into the television, the Oprah interview with Harry and Meghan, not because they were necessarily interested, but it was a nice 2 hour way escape from some of the daily insanities that all of us have to live with. Uh, Certainly, I find their lives are pretty irrelevant to most of our lives, to say the least. And I, it was it, I saw it as 2 hours of escape. It made my wife happy, so that was good. But it was something that exactly how important the Duchess and whatever his title is, Harry's title is, and that she cried because her sister-in-law didn't like her dress or whatever is probably a minimal issue within the great things of the world. I think we have other issues, such as the entire Brazilian hospital system is on the verge of collapse because of COVID. And that was first just in a few states where they could move people from one state to another. But I was just recently on a program on Brazilian television, and it was about a week ago, and I thought, wow, this is really not good. But it's gotten worse since I did that program, and so my heart really goes out to all the people in Brazil. I know that they're trying to work to get more vaccines. Israel has now, I think we talked last time about that Austria, Denmark, and Israel have formed this alliance. And now there's a new alliance in Europe, which is Israel, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. So there are going to be 5 countries that are all going to be working on producing rapid vaccines and rapid therapeutics. And they will be sending some of that to Brazil. So that will be a relief. But wow, they got a lot of problems there, as Italy
Yeah, and
does.
Peter, if you go back to Brazil, Brazil kind of ignored the situation for the longest
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and
It's,
everything was open. There was people acted like there is really no big issue, and this is kind of the result. And this is my
yeah.
fear for this country as well,
Yeah.
because we're
Well,
starting to ignore the problem
yeah.
as a new normal.
Well, the Brazilian situation is slightly different because so many people in Brazil live in favelas, in slums, and it would have been impossible to social distance. And I think the government there was kind of worried about two sides of it. One side of it was the need to get people to wear masks and social distance, which probably was not going to take place in large parts of Brazilian cities. And then secondly, trying to enforce a law that would become unenforceable, causing riots. And so it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Um, they're certainly not a Western country in the way, and if we want to compare a European country with the United States, that kind of makes sense. In Latin America, it's tough because you can have 25 people in a house, and the houses are one on top of the other, and that's what happened, for example, in Guayaquil in Ecuador, where there was impossible to social distance anybody because there was no space. People were all clustered together, and either they had to sleep on the street, or they had, they lived in these terrible slums, and that became a real problem. So
And, and if you
no one
if you
quite
look at
knows the solution.
yeah, and if you look at a city like Rio, one of the most stunning cities in the world, I have to say, I love
Yes.
Rio. But the problem is quite obvious. There are like 3 or 4 different roads parallel to the beach. And when you're at the last road, furthest away from the beach, you're in the slums.
Yeah.
And it's all so densely together. And yes, you're absolutely right. And it's not only the slums, because the slums would spill over to areas that are not slums very
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah. So, when I was working in the on the Olympics in Brazil and on the World Cup, that was a real issue because the favelas, the slums, are sometimes only 2 or 3 blocks from Copacabana or from
Right,
some of
exactly.
these
Yes.
areas. And one of the ways I learned what was safe and not safe was I worked with the garbage collectors, because they would see where there were body parts on the streets. And so that I would get up at 5:30 in the morning or 6 and talk to the licheros, to the garbage collectors, and they would tell me, "Don't go on this street," or "This street had a big fight," or "This street is too close to whatever." And that's how I knew how to be safe. And so I learned that you really had to come up with creative ways of it wasn't a Western world; it was a very different world, and that's makes fighting COVID really difficult when you have that many people together. There's no social distancing. People don't have money for masks. They sometimes barely have money for just to eat. So you don't want to have a riot. On the other hand, you don't want people, what's going on now with the hospitals being overflowing. And we're seeing other problems, such as in Italy, where I think they just had their 100,000th death, if I'm not mistaken, which
And
is,
Italy has a new strain. We reported about it today. You can see it on eTurboNews.com. Mario wrote this report from Rome. And currently there is a new strain of a virus, what was detected in Italy and what originates from Thailand. In Thailand, they only had one known case, and it was imported from Egypt, they claim. And it's a very, very contagious
yeah,
strain. So this is now in Italy. The good news in Italy, though, is that vaccine becomes more and more widely available. There is a deal just about to happen. It's about to be signed with Russia, out of all places, for the Russian Sputnik vaccine.
Sputnik 5.
And so the only reason this hasn't happened yet is, I think, because the European Union somehow has to co-sign it, and they haven't done this yet. So once this is available, there's, according to our correspondent in Rome, the vaccine should be able to speed up quite a bit in Italy.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm somewhat confused why the Europeans have done such a poor job of vaccine distribution. I know that they have the AstraZeneca in the United Kingdom, and I thought that was supposed to kind of cover most of the EU, and it just doesn't seem to have worked. I mean, the Danish are upset, the Czechs are upset, the Hungarians are upset, the Austrians are upset, and they're all saying that Europe is going backwards rather than forward. So I'm not sure why that is, but the Germans, I guess, are functioning pretty well, but much of the rest of the continent's really having a hard time.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, of course, every country is different, and you mentioned Germany, and I know from Germany that people younger than I am are already vaccinated, and it's
Yes.
going on quite right. Actually, right now, the change in Germany is that this vaccine is about to be made available to pharmacies. And then pharmacies, of course, they are not allowed to administer this to anyone and everyone. It has to go, down the priority ladder. But the priority ladder is quite a bit lower already. People are vaccinated. That here in Hawaii, we don't even think about it yet.
Yeah, but that just seems to be Germany. In other words, much of the rest of Europe is not doing very well at all. So I do understand that Germany's doing okay, but you're seeing complaints across the EU Even in France and in Holland, people are complaining about poor delivery of vaccinations. So I'm not sure why that's happening. You would kind of think Europe would be more advanced in this type of situation, and they're really not doing a good job. On the other hand, the Russian vaccine does seem to be getting around the world. I'm not quite sure why the Americans and the British vaccines, which I believe to be medically are superior, are not getting more widely distributed more quickly. That's something that needs to be think through, and that's adding to the desperation of tourism. Cruises are being canceled or post. Well, nobody gets canceled; they get paused. The pause just continues. It feels like ad infinitum. Um, People are looking for new places to attract visitors, such as I think the Seychelles are now trying to get Russian tourists, something which would have been unthinkable maybe a year ago, because hotels are dying. And I think you wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with ITB in Berlin.
Yeah, and coming back to the Seychelles, Aeroflot announced, I think as of today, there are flights now non-stop, first flights ever between Seychelles and Moscow non-stop. And this is a market, of course. Seychelles is a very small island, but Russians were always quite pushy in the Seychelles because there are only very few countries that have an embassy. And China and Russia are two of these important countries besides the British and the French. The US, for instance, doesn't have an embassy in the Seychelles. So this is an interesting development. Yeah, ITB in Berlin, it's where it's all started because it was the first major tourism trade show that was canceled the last minute, exactly a year ago, because of COVID. Now this year,
and predicted
ITB
by
in Berlin,
eTurboNews before anybody else.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We predicted it, and we really got a lot of heat over it, and people said they would boycott us, and you name it, no one believed it. And unfortunately, I wish we would have been wrong, but we weren't wrong. And a year later, the situation hasn't really become any more promising. And ITB, like many other events, is now ongoing virtual. I think that just started today. And what I'm surprised is I understand the fee to participate in virtual discussion or find sellers virtually you can talk to. They're charging €99. That's about $120. While in normal times, when people actually go to Berlin and attend physically, the rate was about €50, about half of it. So that's surprising. And then also surprising is, by all means, it's a more sophisticated Zoom conference. It's an online conference. No one travels anywhere. The hotels are hurting and suffering. The city, the taxi drivers are out of business. The shops have no customers. But ITB Berlin is selling exhibitor space for, I think, up to €5,000. And if you really analyze who's buying the space, these are the destinations that are really in dire straits. Mostly countries that most likely cannot afford it. The big guys kind of stay more conservative. So it's an interesting trend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if people actually, it's one thing to charge, it's another thing to get customers. So right now, I don't think we know how many people actually are paying these prices. It may be that it's a complete dud, in which case, if you spend €5,000 for an exhibit, a virtual exhibit, it's not even a real exhibit, it's a virtual exhibit, and you don't have any people attending, you're not going to be happy. And that's going to have long-term consequences. It'll be a long time till you go back again. So, I'm pretty much convinced that we're starting to get some real Zoom fatigue. People are tired of these virtual conferences. And while I think we're very appreciative, we would be in a terrible situation if we didn't have the technology. I think there's also, we kind of people need the human touch again. And I think I'm hoping people will want to get back to tourism as quickly as possible once it's safe to travel.
No, absolutely. Everyone is ready to go someplace. It just, safety is the key. It's not like that we don't want to travel.
Health,
Everyone wants
health,
to travel.
Yeah. And so, and we're making progress, but it's not consistent. So we have the airplanes themselves are quite, I think, quite safe, but the terminals have some real issues. So if you could get into an airplane without going through an airport, you'd be great. The problem is you can't board the plane without crossing the airport, or getting off the plane, you're getting an airport. So these are the issues that are somewhat irregular and have to be really worked out before a recovery can take place. The same thing, I think it's going to be a while till the cruise industry really comes back. And that's going to be a real challenge for places like the Caribbean or some of the Mediterranean ports that are really cruise dependent. And so they're going to have to come up with some new creative ways of doing it, because you could maybe hold out for 2 or 3 months, but we're now in our second year of this, and that's going to be a long time without a paycheck.
Right, absolutely. And this, of course, is the second problem. It's not only the willingness that you do want to travel, it's also, can you really afford to travel
Right.
when things are opening up?
Well, those are some happy thoughts for a rainy day in Hawaii. Let's hope that when we speak next, the sun will be shining, and we're going to have really great news that we can report. You notice I decided, in honor of your rain, to wear a yellow shirt to represent the idea that I'm hoping that Hawaii gets its sunshine back, and that the sun will shine all over the world, not only in reality, but also figuratively, symbolizing that people's economies will also come back. So, well, good night from College Station, and we are hoping our beautiful weather continues throughout the week.
Peter, this was a very good closing. I couldn't agree more.
And I think we have a special after this, which is we're going to be hearing from one of the most unique countries in Africa, from Eswatini. It's, many people don't know the word. It used to be Swaziland, and the name has been changed to give it more of a, I assume, a true African flavor. And I think if people should stay on, they're going to hear about a really interesting conversation with the Minister of Tourism. And we really need to talk a little bit about Eswatini, because it's got a really unique culture. They have unique costumes and dress. And it's a country in Southern Africa. I believe it's surrounded by the Republic of South Africa.
No, not really. It's bordering on Mozambique.
Oh, okay.
In South Africa. And yeah, His Excellency Moses Vilakati, he's the Minister of Tourism and Environment. You will hear him in a few minutes here, and he will confirm that this African kingdom has a big heart for tourism. So let's see what he has. Let's hear what he has to say.
All right. Well, then we end with lots of love, and hopefully the big heart of Eswatini will extend around the world.
Perfectly.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Without a further delay, I wanted to introduce our guest of honor. And this is also a gentleman who has been essential in the African Tourism Board. I helped to also set up in 2018. And Cuthbert would say a little bit more, but I wanted to not let him wait. He's the Minister of Tourism from a very important country when it comes to travel and tourism. It's the Kingdom of Eswatini. And those that don't know where Eswatini is, and I know there are people where we have a global world and not everyone knows where every country is, but if you hear Swaziland, then you know where it is. Swaziland, yes. It's now the Kingdom of Eswatini. It's in the southern part of Africa, and the Honorable Minister Vilakati has been, as I said, essential. He's always available. He's always there. He has joined a lot of our sessions, even quietly in the background. And I want to thank you for this.
Great minister.
Yes, he's a global player from an important country, but he will tell you himself. Welcome. Good evening, Honorable Minister.
Good evening, Johan, and good evening to all. It's always great to be here and to listen and to hear from great friends. As I've been introduced, I'm the Minister of Tourism, but I've also other feathers like because it's Minister of Tourism, Environment Affairs, and Forestry. So it's quite a mouthful. And I'm very excited to be part of this discussion. Here we are talking rebuilding travel, but I really wanted to focus more on Africa because, and to that extent, talk a bit about Eswatini. But maybe before I even get there, when I joined the African Tourism Board, little did I know that I would meet great friends, great people who were able to share with me their experiences in tourism. My background is that of being an agriculturalist. So here I am now having to talk tourism. But I was used to traveling, so I used to experience a few things here and there. But when I became a member of the African Tourism Board, I gained a lot of experience from the expertise that you have heard of, some of the individuals that have been introduced. And for me, it was very exciting to meet, greet, and share experiences on how we can shape tourism in Africa and throughout the world. And that is the exciting part. And when I look at the year where we are right now and realize the achievements that we have had, and obviously some challenges here and there, I can attest that this has been a worthwhile journey for us to achieve more. Where is Eswatini? Well, some would say, hey, we have never heard of such a country. It is there. It's in Southern Africa, surrounded by South Africa and Mozambique. And it's about 17,000 square kilometers. Very small, but with a big heart. And a very big heart for that matter. We pride ourselves as a country that still follows traditions and cultural norms of the country. We are a monarchy, and we have preserved our culture, which is very rich, for the past 400 years, which is basically from generation to generation. And we therefore welcome guests from the continent, from the world, who visit our country to witness some of these cultural events and activities. They are there throughout the year. But more than that, when you look at the scenery, is very majestic with valleys and forestry, plus wildlife reserves. We pride ourselves that we have got the Big Five, which you can be able to see within a day. And this has helped us a lot, the combination of the culture and the combination of the wildlife and the sceneries. But this is true for most of the African countries, as some of you might have visited, because Africa prides itself of that. It still needs to be nurtured. And the issue of environment, I was happy that as a country where tourism and environment under one roof, because through the preservation of the environment, then we're able to say we have got a country, we've got the environment which we try to keep intact. Now, when I look back in terms of the rebuilding of the travel. It has not been an easy journey. In particular, after March last year, when COVID-19 came and changed the way in which we were used to attracting people to come to our country. I remember very well, I thought that it was going to be just a 1 month thing. I said, it's just a normal flu. It's going to be over within a week, a month. It's the whole year right now. So we have got to start adapting to the new norm because it's now a new normal. Thank God that the doctors have been very good and they've started producing some of these vaccines, which we hope will now help us to start opening our borders and visiting our brothers and sisters and our friends. What did we then do as a country and as a region and as Africa? During those pandemics, each country obviously had to close its borders. And it meant the tourism sector was really affected and affected badly. In our country, tourism contributes about 10%, but last year, 10% of the GDP. But due to the COVID, it has gone down to almost 3%. Hospitality industries have closed. People have been retrenched. And we've started thinking about the new norm. How do we now survive? How do we rebuild our travel? How do we make sure that the people that used to enjoy the wildlife can still come to our countries? This is the big question that I think we need to discuss and deliberate on to make sure that we can rebuild our fragile tourism sector. But maybe before I end, tourism is really resilient. And if we package our narratives, we would ensure that we can attract those people that love to travel. People have been quarantined and they are saying we want to come. And therefore, it's about time to say we are open, and Africa is now opening, by the way. We are already seeing countries getting the COVID vaccines, and we're hoping that by July, August, most of these countries would have been vaccinated. And that is an opportunity that we can now cherish together. But as countries, what we then did was we started focusing on the domestic tourism. We realized that there were lots of things that we didn't know internally. And that has been going from country to country. And fortunately, it's an opportunity that has been brought by this pandemic because now we have more ambassadors. We now have more people who now understand the countryside, who understand what the beauty of the country, the sceneries, etc. And that to me has been the lessons that I've learned to make sure that as I present today, I can say I now understand the country better because I've also tried to travel because there were certain places that I wouldn't travel because I wanted to lead from the front to make sure that, yes, you can go to such and such a place. Yes, you can enjoy a meal in there. Yes, you can climb this mountain. And I think that is the lesson that I learned. As we move forward, we have a dedicated strategy that say, as we open our borders, let's make sure that we can incentivize the people and the tourists that are going to come to our various countries. We can now share with our neighbors so that if people come to Southern Africa, we can start looking at a bouquet, which will allow people to visit one country and to the next. But the key is to make sure that the protocols are similar, because if the protocols are not similar, then we might encounter problems as we move forward. Otherwise, with me, I'm very excited to be here. I look forward to the discussions and to answer any questions. I realize that there are a number of guests, so I felt that I should just whet your appetite so that I can be able to answer questions as we move along. Thank you very much, Juergen, and thank you very much for listening to me.
And thank you, Minister, so much for laying this out. Before we get to question, if you allow us, I wanted to recognize Louis D'Amour. He has very limited time, I understand, so I want to give him the floor, and then we can maybe go to questions for the Minister and Louis, and then go on in the program. And in between, it's an open forum. So if you have questions of any sort in between, feel free to raise your hand. But we have Anita raising her hand. Anita, let us know where you're from, and go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, WTN team. This is a wonderful program. I'm happy to be here. I'm from Nigeria. I'm the president of the Women in Renewable Energy Association, and I'm also the founder, chairman of Smiling Simon Greenfield Foundation, and we are into ecotourism. We are working through the tourism value chain in such a way that we can decarbonize, the environment. And I love what the minister has spoken about, the environment, protection of the environment through tourism. And I really would like to ask him, how can we all work together in Africa, particularly through that wonderful body, African Tourism Organization, that we can have a pavilion in one country of the 54 countries, featuring our foods, our culture, tradition, our beverages, all under one little pavilion, so that we can actually work with a peace mission, because we can go through food and our beverages and foster peace in Africa. That is my question for him. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. This is a mouthful. I was last in Nigeria when I went to Ibadan at IITA, and I learned a lot, particularly about business, and also some of the cultural activities that obtained in Nigeria. I was very, very excited. There were certain things I was trying to steal, but little did I know that at some point I'll be a minister. If I knew then, I would have ensured that some of your cultures would have come down south of Africa. I think the question that you are putting on the floor is very, very important. How can we make sure that we can capitalize on the rich cultures of Africa? Because from country to country, the cultures are very, very rich. I think we need to start looking at that. When I look at some of these cultural events that are done outside of Africa, like the Brazilian cultural event, I think we can have one in Africa. And through African Tourism Board, I will have to push Cuthbert to make sure that we host one, so that all of these cultures can come together. It can start as a weekend, and thereafter maybe for the whole week. Imagine having all of those cultures under one roof, and each one showcasing what they are good at. Of course, I know that Eswatini would beat you, but that's for another day. I think it's a wonderful idea, Cuthbert. Please, let's check it as part of the menu that as we move forward. I really would like to take this one on immediately.
No, this is a very good feedback, Anita. And of course, we didn't forget Cuthbert. Cuthbert definitely needs to weigh in there. Before we go to Cuthbert, Taleb raised his hand. So let's go to Taleb and then we go to Cuthbert, if that's okay.
Thank you so much. I just want to salute the minister. He's been a great minister. And I want to tell him something, a secret between him and I. He shouldn't worry about the fact that he's not specialized in tourism. You're an agricultural person, you have passion for tourism. I was like you. I came from architecture, from politics, into tourism. But you have to have passion, and you have it. Minister, what you said is absolutely correct. You are a great man, and you'll do a lot of good things, I'm sure. Just wanted to say that before we move on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Taleb. And yeah, and the minister already addressed Cuthbert Nkubi. Cuthbert Nkubi is the chairman of the African Tourism Board. African Tourism Board started in 2018, and Cuthbert has been there from the very beginning. African Tourism Board, when you think about African Tourism Board, you definitely think about Cuthbert Nkubi in Pretoria, and there's a lot going on, and I think the suggestion from Moses is quite important. And Cuthbert is now, I think, joining us today from Namibia. He's traveling, and I have to say that we're all of us who knew Cuthbert had COVID in quite a bad way, and it looks like he fully recovered. And there's a little bit of a story also through it, and if you want to tell this story, feel free to do so. We've published it in eTurboNews, but it's amazing the recovery Cuthbert made. He looks like the old Cuthbert, and I don't mean old in a way of old, but you're looking young and fresh. And thank you for joining both sessions, Cuthbert.
From African, saved by African.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Juergen. Really appreciate your support and your prayers as well. Honorable Minister, thank you so much. We really appreciate, always eager to move and to run. And we really appreciate as we are aligning Eswatini within the global tourism space. We acknowledge and we're noting your endeavors and your participation as well within the African Tourism Board. We really appreciate and thank you so much. Thank you so much once again, Juergen, Dr. Tarlow, Dr. Taleb, as we celebrate the high and byways of success drawn by yourselves and team players behind the World Tourism Network supported by the African Tourism Board in bringing the tourism champions together in so many engagements that we have had. May I hasten to echo the words of our executive member and patron of African Tourism Board, Dr. Taleb, that all mankind originated from Africa. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, it doesn't matter your height and your length, we are all brothers and sisters. The beauty part of it is that tourism has cemented that narrative and reality of it. May I therefore be allowed to go much further to say that Africa is the richest continent on earth, with so much gold mined from mountains and valleys of almost all the member states. Diamonds produced in South Africa, in Botswana, in Namibia, where I am today, Liberia, Sierra Leone, just to name a few. We produce the best cocoa. Africa produces the best tea that has found its market on the shelves of the United Kingdom and beyond. So therefore, Africa has plates of platinum and layers that can supply the whole world for the next decade. What am I saying, colleagues? When it comes to tourism, it is the only primary drivers of economic growth and job creation in Africa. We have a unique history, as I allude to my minister, that with our diversity across the continent, our natural wonders that have gained momentum and attention amid the local and global increase in cultural heritage. I allude with you, Anita, that with our rich cultural heritage, we need to have a conference where we have a conversion of all our diversity to celebrate the beauty of Africa through tourism. Our 54 member states have tremendous opportunity to become and remain vibrant hosts for both domestic and international tourism and investment at large. Therefore, as we set the pace for activation to our tourism economy, dear brothers and sisters across the globe, Africa is open. Africa is rich. Come visit and invest. This is your home. We will welcome you with wide open arms. Thank you so much, Juergen. We really appreciate. Thank you so much.